Good morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. I'm Barry Bryson, and we're continuing our study of the Gospel of Matthew. We're right in the middle of the missionary sermon in chapter 10, and I'm going to begin by reading verses 26 through 33. Last time he gave them real reality check, a wake-up call, a sobering bucket of water on their heads about the way the world is going to be that he's about to send them out into. And today he's going to tell them to not be afraid, to be ready for the moment, and to trust that they are ready for the moment. Verse 26, so have no fear of them, for nothing is covered that will not be revealed, or hidden that will not be known. What I tell you in the dark, say in the light, and what you hear whispered, proclaim on the housetops. And do not fear those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul. Rather fear him who can destroy both soul and body in hell. That's God, of course. That's God. You reserve your reverence for God. You don't have to revere anybody else. Are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? And not one of them will fall to the ground apart from your Father. Even the hairs of your head are all numbered. Fear not, therefore, you are of more value than many sparrows. So everyone who acknowledges me before men, I will acknowledge before my Father who is in heaven. But whoever denies me before men, I will also deny before my Father in heaven. Do not be afraid. In the first place, you're going to be ready in the moment. So don't be afraid. What I've told you privately, you proclaim on the housetops. You just get on the rooftops and you shout it as loudly as you can. Because, in the first place, everything is going to be brought to light. They may put a hood over your head and haul you off to what they think is a black site and torture you there. But God knows, and it's all going to be revealed. And in the end, everything will end as God intends it to end. And you can count on that. Nothing that human beings can do will ever change that. And so you get out there and say what you're supposed to say and not be afraid to say it. Don't be afraid of them. They cannot do anything to your soul. They can torture your body, which is temporary. And you're going to receive a resurrection body later on anyway, which is permanent. This is a temporary dwelling. And this is all of us they can get to. They cannot get to what God has promised us if we hold on to it ourselves. Also, do you know how much you mean to God? And he gives them this example, and he uses street food that they would all know, they'd be familiar with. You could buy 2 little sparrows on a stick, street food from a vendor for a leptocoin. You could buy 2 sparrows for a leptocoin, the smallest coin, for a penny, for a farthing, the King James Bible says. And yet, those birds were living things at one point. Living things that were alive because God creates life. And when they died, God knew about it. How much more valuable are you to him than that? Exponentially more valuable. He says the very hairs of God knows how many hairs you have on your head. That's how important, that's how valuable you are to him. So don't be afraid. And then he says, and this is a warning, and again, judgment. Every section of this, each section ends with a reminder of judgment. Everyone who confesses me, who gives witness of me before men, I will give witness to before my Father. Everyone who denies me before men, I will deny before my Father. He's already talked about a moment like this in Matthew chapter 7. Many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, didn't we do all this great stuff in your name? And I will say to them, depart from me, I never knew you. So he's already described this actual circumstance that will happen in the future. And the pressure to deny Jesus is going to be great over the first few centuries. And it continues to be great on us, just in much more subtle ways, and therefore maybe perhaps in more difficult ways to resist. We'll talk more about that part of it later. But they would be tortured to death for 300 years, off and on. And there would be at least 3 strong attempts at state-sponsored genocide of Christians before Christianity was legalized in 313. So they know, I mean, this is going to come true, and they have to be ready to face it. And he says, if you just continue to confess me before men, I will confess you before my Father. There is a foreshadowing. There is a foreshadowing of what Peter is going to do and convict himself of in this. And I'm sure that these words were words that rang in his ears when the cock crowed on that terrible night and that terrible morning when he denied Jesus 3 times. Okay, we're going to pick up with verse 34 next time. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word.